Welcome to this explainer. In the high-stakes world of global trade, we are constantly reminded of just how incredibly fragile our supply chains really are. We rely so heavily on a few very vulnerable maritime passages, and when disruptions happen, well, the ripple effects cost literally billions. But right now, we're seeing a massive shift. Smart operators are no longer just accepting these vulnerabilities, they're actually looking to the past to secure the future by reviving historical land routes. So today we're exploring how Turkey's push to resurrect the historic Hejaz Railway, along with building the brand new development road, is completely reshaping Middle East logistics.
Okay, let's dive into this. Just imagine for a second that a major choke point, like the Strait of Hormuz, experiences a sudden disruption tomorrow. What happens? Instantly, political tensions and maritime threats cause war risk insurance premiums to absolutely skyrocket. Shipments get delayed for weeks, and ocean freight costs inflate beyond recognition. When you're entirely dependent on these traditional sea routes, your whole operation is basically a high-stakes gamble against global geopolitical tensions. And honestly, it's a gamble fewer people are willing to take.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with number 1, bypassing maritime choke points. Number 2, Turkey's mega rail corridors. Number 3, the sanctions minefield. Number 4, navigating customs and economics. And we'll wrap up with number 5, AI supply chain workflows. Don't worry, we're covering both the massive opportunities and the sobering legal realities, ending with some seriously cool tech solutions. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Bypassing maritime choke points.
As traditional sea routes become, frankly, expensive gambles, capacity constraints and regional volatility mean that forward-thinking traders are aggressively hunting for resilient alternatives. The contrast here is stark. On one side, ocean freight realities mean you're vulnerable to choke points, bogged down by port congestion and totally at the mercy of volatile war risk insurance. On the flip side, the Overland rail promise. Cross-border rail corridors can slash transit times by up to 40%. This high-velocity alternative is an absolute game-changer, especially if you're moving time-sensitive or cold-chain cargo. It gives you that indispensable logistical redundancy. If a sea route gets blocked, your goods just keep right on moving.
Moving on to Section 2. Turkey's mega rail corridors.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer staggering scale we are talking about here. This is the new blueprint for Middle East logistics, a dual infrastructure play that combines the historic Hejaz Railway revival with the highly ambitious development road project. Over $17 billion is being poured into the development road alone. That is a 1,200-kilometer multimodal route involving Turkey, Iraq, Qatar, and the UAE. It's designed to link Iraq's Grand Fa port directly to the Turkish border through a high-speed network of railways and highways, which eventually connects onward to Europe. It's massive!
And this isn't just a pipe dream, the rollout is happening in distinct phases. By 2026, the focus is squarely on restoring the core Turkey, Syria, Jordan axis of the historic Hejaz line. This includes a critical push by Turkey to rebuild a missing 30-kilometer link in northern Syria that was damaged during the civil war. Then, in the near future, there are ongoing negotiations to extend this right into Saudi Arabia's modern rail network. But the endgame? Reaching Oman. That gives direct access to the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean, completely bypassing Hormuz while tapping into Oman's strategic neutrality.
So what does all this actually look like on the ground? Well, the operational realities are fascinating. Because the Grand Fall port has deep water berths, it bypasses those standard Gulf transshipment bottlenecks. Cargo just gets dropped off and directly transferred to rail. But the real magic, the whole shebang, is the unified transit status. By using automated through bill of lading frameworks, goods avoid standard, time-consuming domestic customs clearance in Iraq. It essentially transforms Iraq from just a destination market into a high-velocity transit corridor for bulk commodities and fast-moving consumer goods. Plus, modern rail is significantly more fuel-efficient than heavy trucking, which is a big win for hitting those modern ESG compliance standards.
All right, let's pivot to Section 3, the sanctions minefield.
We need a sharp tonal shift here, because laying down physical steel tracks does not mean you suddenly have an easy transit route. Remember that 30-kilometer missing segment in Syria I mentioned? Yeah, that represents a massive, complex legal obstacle. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a legal brick wall right now. The primary hurdle is the U.S. Caesars Act. These are sweeping secondary sanctions explicitly targeting any non-U.S. entity providing support to the Syrian government or operating within its infrastructure sectors. It's just a harsh geopolitical reality. Routing cargo through these complex jurisdictions inevitably triggers massive compliance red flags, including intense scrutiny around trade-based money laundering.
So the crucial point is that the risks of getting this wrong are absolutely existential for a business.
Even if the tracks are fully operational tomorrow, utilizing this corridor without proper legal safeguards carries severe risks. We are talking about financial blacklisting, complete asset freezing, and removal from the global SWIFT banking system. Until clear multi-jurisdictional legal waivers exist, early adopters literally have to execute exhaustive, rigorous due diligence on every single counterparty, carrier, and intermediary in their supply chain, no exception.
Section 4. Navigating Customs and Economics. Let's move out of the geopolitical realm for a second and get into the operational weeds. Because theoretical freight savings, they can easily vanish into a black hole of border delays and bureaucratic paperwork nightmares. Connectivity sounds amazing, but trade is governed by strict rules of origin. For instance, moving goods across a corridor that bridges non-Arab Turkey with Syria, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia demands incredibly strict adherence to the Greater Arab Free Trade Area, or GAFTA. If a product originates in a GAFTA state but undergoes transshipment in a non-member hub along the line, without strict bonded customs oversight, poof! Wipes out your preferential tariff status just like that. And that results in heavy, unexpected duties at the final destination, completely destroying any cost savings you thought you made.
And this brilliantly illustrates how shifting from maritime routes to land fundamentally reshapes your trade economics. Your CIF, cost, insurance, and freight valuation changes entirely. Customs authorities compute duties based on the total cost delivered to the border post. You're shifting from ocean freight rates to multi-jurisdictional rail and road transit fees. You are swapping marine and war risk insurance for specialized land cargo insurance. And port handling fees? Those become highly localized border charges. Your calculations have to accurately factor in all these dynamic land-based components if you want to protect those profit margins.
Finally, Section 5. AI Supply Chain Workflows.
Let's move to agentic and see how this builds a completely new way of operating. Because how do you actually manage all of this incredible complexity, a fragmented supply chain spanning ships, trains, and trucks across 4 or 5 borders without drowning in paperwork? You build an active, dynamic solution using agentic AI workflows. Imagine having an autonomous AI agent acting as your command center. Step 1. It actively evaluates live data and detects a geopolitical border delay or a sudden spike in rail rates. Step 2, it instantly cross-references multi-country tariffs and HS codes. Step 3, without any human intervention, it dynamically reroutes your shipment to an available trucking convoy. And Step 4, it autonomously generates the compliant customs documentation and triggers escrow releases. It makes real-time operational pivots to turn these complex trade lanes into predictable, high-velocity routes.
Honestly, this level of traceability is no longer optional. As we can see here, mitigating compliance exposure demands the integration of secure, transparent payment mechanisms. Smart operators just can't rely on traditional open account terms or informal currency markets across these regions anymore. Bulletproof documentation and fully traceable cross-border flows are fundamental requirements. Using digital escrow systems or compliant stablecoin settlements ensures that your exposure is mitigated, which protects your margins and, most crucially, keeps you in good standing with the global banking institutions. So why does all of this matter to us right now? Well, because the traders who thrive in 2026 are going to be the ones who map these corridors into their operations today. You need a diversified playbook. Monitor those official updates from Turkish and GCC transport ministries. Start testing small shipments on these emerging routes to build that structural flexibility. Update your supplier contracts with flexible Incoterms tailored specifically for multi-border land routes. And absolutely leverage AI tools to accurately model your end-to-end costs. You really need to position yourself on the right side of these historic shifts before your competitors do. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Is your supply chain actually ready for the new Silk Road? The days of relying solely on vulnerable sea routes and a few maritime choke points are coming to an end. The infrastructure is being built right now, the trains are getting ready to run, and the digital tools are finally available to manage the complexity. Now is the time to rethink your logistics, embrace the incredible flexibility of these emerging overland corridors, and future-proof your operations. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to dig deeper into how these new routes could completely transform your business.